Hello, this is going to be rhythm exercise group number 3, and the new rhythmic concepts we're doing in this rhythm exercise group, in this chunk of material, are going to be whole notes and eighth notes. Now to review, so far we started off with quarter notes, right? And what we started doing is branching outward. We then introduced half notes, and now whole notes and eighth notes. Now, if all those words meant nothing to you, I want you to instead picture that very commonly our system of measurement, like let's say volume, like gallons and pints and quarts, especially in this country, it's actually interesting because everything is just based off of like either dividing by 2 or dividing by 4. So for example, like 2 cups equal a pint, 2 pints equal a quart, and then 4 quarts, quarter, equal a gallon. And so, but there's also half gallon. So you think, gallon jug of water, half gallon of ice cream, quart of milk, pint of beer, a cup of sugar, like all those things, like all those measurements have a pretty clear relationship to each other. And I want you to think of the same way. What is he talking about? He's just talking about food all of a sudden? No, I'm talking about rhythm because they all have a similar relationship in that we're cutting them in half. So if we were to start with the whole note, which is at the top of the rhythm exercise group page, in that little box there says introducing notated drum tones, whole notes, and eighth notes. And that first note, it looks like sideways egg, an open circle. Musician slang, sometimes they call them footballs. That's just a little by the way thing. But that's a whole note. And what you need to know, that equals 4 beats when we're in 4/4. And then we cut that in half, we get a half note. And if we cut the half notes in half again, or we'll slice them in half, we get quarter notes. So we have 4 quarter notes in a whole note, 2 half notes in a whole note, right? I'll say that again. 4 quarter notes in a whole note, 2 half notes in a whole note. So 4 quarters in a whole, 2 halves in a whole. And then the new value we're doing is eighth notes. So take a wild guess how many eighth notes are in a whole note. 8. Right? 8 eighth notes in a whole note. And so what this means is that musically, you want to be able to hear, and you're going to be able to hear, and therefore count through rhythms that double in their speed. So number 19, if you look at number 19, it introduces all 4 of those rhythmic values in a row. First measure is 1 whole note. Second measure is 2 half notes. Third measure is 4 quarter notes. And the fifth measure is 8 eighth notes. So we're going to have to add some new counting syllables into the mix to accommodate that because we're starting to talk about notes in between beats, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, if you think about it, there's some space in there, and we can start to fill in that space. And so our first way of filling it in is going to be with eighth notes. And at this point, our counting, like normally we've just been using numbers. Not so far, we've just been using numbers. And so it doesn't seem like too crazy. You can almost think of like each number is like a street address on a street, and one measure is a street. So do you live at beat 1 or do you live at beat 2 or 3 or 4? But then you could think about the halfway points. That's what I guess the address analogy breaks down there. But this is where our counting system starts to resemble what's called solfege. Do, a deer, a female deer. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Those syllables each represent a step on a ladder. And it's a way to create a quick association with something that you're hearing. And counting syllables are going to be very similar in that as you do it more, you're going to be able to create some associations that will help be like a quick shortcut into you understanding, memorizing, reproducing all valuable things. A rhythm, memorizing a rhythm, understanding a rhythm, reproducing a rhythm. Those are all things that you're going to want to be able to do. And they're all things that you can do already to some degree. So if we look at number 19, now if you look carefully, well, not even that carefully, it's pretty obvious, there are really busy counts under every measure, regardless of how many notes are going in there. And all that is a system to make sure that you don't lose track of what the fastest rhythm is going to be. So in anything prior to this, the fastest rhythm was only ever quarter notes. So we never needed to insert anything more than that. But we always counted the quarter notes, whether it was 1, 2, 3, 4, or if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, the quarter notes were still underneath because that was the fastest, rapidest, smallest rhythm that we needed to have access to throughout the thing that we were doing. The 4 bars, the 8 bars, the 16 bars, however long we were doing something, we wanted to keep track of the fastest rhythm. And number 19, the fastest rhythm, is now eighth notes. Now, real quick, eighth notes can look a couple different ways, and so you'll notice 19 and then 20. Well, the last measure of 19 and the first measure of 20, those are both eighth notes. It's just different ways to group them. You know, imagine they're packaged. You know, like whether you get, I don't know, you're buying, either, I can't think of something, a type of food that's packaged. You like individually wrapped candy bars. Let's say candy bars, because I'm hungry right now. Individually wrapped candy bars versus they come in a box. It doesn't change what the candy bar is. It just changes how much you can hold at one time or how much you're taking in. So whether they're grouped in 4s or in 2s, the eighth notes are they can look those two different ways. So now we're going to go to number 19, and we're going to play this. If you look at the other introduction thing in that box, it says introducing notated drum tones. So the drum tones, now one of our strokes is called a tone, but in general, tones just refer to sounds, right? The tones of an instrument, the tones of a bell, the tones of the chimes on the subway when you get on. And so these are all, if you notice, the note head is actually at the bottom of the staff, and just bottom means lower. So we're going to play these all as bass or thud strokes for number 19 because the note head itself is notated down on the lower part of the 5 lines of the staff. It's on the bottom space. If you read treble clef, that would be an F. If you read bass clef, that would be an A, right? Can't see my A. So number 19, we're going to play this all while counting all the eighth notes. Count all the eighth notes. Do it now. Do it when it's easy, right? Get on board when the train is going slow because it's going to pick up speed and you're going to have to run a little faster to catch up to it, right? That's actually a really good way of thinking of it is get on the counting train now, right? I'm not being silly. I'm actually, it's a good way to think of it. So we're going to do this at 84 beats per minute. If you notice, that's notated up at the top of the page. Just going to make sure that the metronome is a good volume for us. Okay, sounds good. We're going to count out loud the whole time. The metronome is giving you the beat, the quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. But we're going to add in those eighth notes. So here we go. Number 19. 2, ready, count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's do that again. Make sure you're counting all the way through. That would maybe have been a surprise with the counts there. Let's do it again. Here we go. 1, 2, 19 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. You know what? I just messed that up. So sorry. We're going to go back. Scratch that. Number 19. Ready? Go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if you caught my mistake and wondered what the heck is he doing, give yourself a little bonus point right there. That was an inadvertent test to see if you were paying attention and reading as opposed to just following what I was doing. All right, now we're going to back it up. We're going to do number 20. So we're doing essentially what's called a retrograde. We're going to take the last measure, make it first, make the first measure the last measure and flip the insides as well. Here we go. Number 20. 1, 2, ready, and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. Now, I want to see if you noticed, what did I do differently that time? I didn't explain the notation, but there is a notational difference. Take a look at the page. This is to be played all as tone strokes or muted. If you're playing a metal instrument, you want to mute the instrument. Oh, wow. Here we go. So if we have a go go, we would, if we're playing a tone, we would, I'm using a pencil, as opposed to letting it ring out. So that's something you can do on a metal instrument, but for drums, you're out at the edge, your fingers are closed, and you're going to let your hands be slightly sticky on the drum. We want a little bit of a drier sound, and as we practice this, it'll get easier and easier to differentiate the two between slaps and tones, which are both out at the edge. Let's do number 20 again. This time, check it out. Make sure you're doing your tone strokes. Out on the edge, these knuckles should be lining up with the drum, the edge of the drum. Here we go. 1, 2, 20, count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so not too tricky, hopefully. I do want to address that, especially since we're not clapping and we're not showing the duration, I did want to use an instrument that does have duration. So I have a little gong here, and what I'm going to do is, just so you can hear how the counts actually fill out long sounds. I'm sure most of you can use your imaginations, but just so we can hear it, it's also somewhat of an interesting sound. This is a Thai nipple gong, which is called. It has a little protrusion on the middle of it. So here we go. 1 and 2, 20, ready, and go, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and then there's silence, right? In this case, I'm showing the silence by just stopping the ringing of that instrument. So just in case this is getting a little abstract in terms of like why are we doing whole notes, it's just basically to finish making sure that you understand the longer sounds. We're not going to spend a lot of time with respect to. Still recording? Is it still recording? I think it is. You know what? I'm going to stop it just in case.